Thank you very much. Good morning. May I ask you, how many of you in the audience take decisions in your daily work? That's quite a lot. How about you? How many of you in the audience actually base your decisions on evidence and facts? Well, that's a bit more tricky, isn't it? And this is the whole thing. I think access to information is absolutely key for development, but unless we act on information, we will not create change. Imagine yourself, you're all sitting in this plane, you're piloting this plane, it's running in the night, hitting a storm ahead of you, and without the information and data on your navigation system, you would be completely gone. You would be lost. And unfortunately, I feel that a lot of us that are working on development issues are actually not using data and evidence properly to drive better decision. That is why I created Data Act Lab 3 years ago. We work on helping governments to make sense of complex data. And the question is, it's not a problem really that we don't have data and information. It's just sitting in many different databases all across the world. And it's very difficult for people to understand the data. And if we cannot understand data and information, we will not act upon it. So what I would talk about today is a project that we developed together with the Brookings Institution in Washington. It's called Ending Rural Hunger, and what it really is a project where we gather data from 30 different databases all around the world. We put the data into one database and made the data comparable. And what we wanted to do was to see what happens when we can combine data on needs, where are people hungry in the world, data on policies, are countries using policies that are conducive to end hunger, and financial resources. Are resources that are targeted to end hunger actually being used in a successful way? So basically, the challenge we have ahead of us is that we have about 800 million people that are undernourished. This is today in 2016. 25% of all the children on this globe suffer stunted growth today. And at the same time, a third of all the food is wasted globally. I think this is quite disturbing. So we need to change this, and that is why we have the Sustainable Development Goals. We want to eradicate hunger by 2030, improve nutrition, and make sure that agriculture is sustainable. So where are the hungry people? Let us have a look at the world map. All these white lines here, that is actually Sweden. We are about 10 million people in Sweden, so each and every line there is Sweden, just placed out on the world globe. We have about 220 million people suffering from undernourishment in sub-Saharan Africa, about 280 million people in South Asia, and then the rest of the world is also suffering, of course, of undernourishment, but the biggest problem is really in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. South Asia is taking off, but we have still a lot of problems in sub-Saharan Africa. So moving forward, we really need to focus very heavily on the small-scale farmer that is out there. This is a woman, she lives on the slopes of Mount Kenya, and she is representing one of the 500 million small-scale farmers on this globe that in all sustains 2 billion people. So what we need to do is to make sure that all our efforts are targeted towards these groups. And what is then the world doing to target our efforts? What the data showed is that what the developed countries are actually doing is that we are supporting our own farmers through subsidies to the tune of $250 billion on average. This is OECD countries. And at the same time, the same countries spend about $12 billion on aid to food and nutrition security. So we spend about 20 to 30 times more on subsidies helping to support our own farmers back home here in Europe, instead of supporting the woman in Mount Kenya. And just to give you a comparison, these $12 billion is about 4% of what the Western world is just spending on snack food. So these are the figures we're working on. And so definitely moving the 2030 agenda forward, more and better targeted aid is needed to food and nutrition security. Let us have a look at then how well we target those efforts. So what we're looking at here, and I will explain this graph a bit, is that we took all the data on food, or on needs, policies, and resources, and put together in this graph. So these are all the countries in the world mapped out. The orange here is Europe and Central Asian countries. The green is the Caribbean, and then the yellow here is Sub-Saharan Africa. And on this axis, at the bottom here, we have needs. So countries that are on this side have very great needs, and countries that are on that side of the graph have low needs. And on this axis up here, we have policies. So countries that are up there in the left-hand corner have strong policies, and down in the left corner at the bottom, weak policies. And the size of the bubble here is the amount of resources available to end hunger per rural capita. So what we see here is actually that countries that are up there in the left-hand corner are countries that really don't have a lot of needs. There are not a lot of hungry people up there. This is Europe and Central Asia. There's a big bubble. That means they have a lot of resources available. Latin America and Caribbean, also the big bubbles up there. So these countries really do not have the greatest needs. Whereas we have down here sub-Saharan countries that do have a lot of needs. The policies are a bit weaker, but at the same time, that is where the challenge is, but the resources are just not going here. So in order to move forward, we need a very inclusive agenda. We need to have all the different actors that work on Target 2, SDG2 to end hunger, to be connected. We need to make sure that civil society, recipient governments, donor governments, international organizations, media, etc., are well connected. All these dots need to be well connected, and data and information is absolutely key in order for us to move this agenda forward and make sure that we will reach the goal of ending rural hunger by 2030. Thank you.